Good evening and welcome to the May 20th Planning Board meeting. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll start this evening with roll call. Mike Caparillo, President.
Tom Young, Vice Chair.
Bob Curtis, member.
Mike Frodo, Secretary.
Absent this evening is Mr. Blanchett, Mr. Capelson, Mr. Bork, and Mr. Garrett. Okay. Start the evening with public input. Seeing no public, we'll close public input. First item on the agenda is excavation regulations and update on current sites. And I see that you posted up on the planning board section, the excavation regulations.
Yeah, I've just put up some quick links to the background information.
Okay. And do we have an update on current sites that there's a list that is being looked at?
We have a $72,000 bond on Litchfield Sand and Gravel at the north end of town. Kevin and I were going to try and get up there. We haven't gotten there yet. He's busy this week. I do, every year I get from Litchfield Sand and Gravel hydrological and wetlands monitoring annual report, and this also goes to Dr. Ballestero at UNH Department of Civil Engineering. So I have these for many years back. This is this year's. Anybody'd like to take a look at it. And the other one we have a $5,000 bond on is it's Continental Hair Academy, but it's called CarCon on the bond, and that's right across the street from Mel's, where they do some parking once in a while.
So are these all, what would be the next step of these? Do they need visits? They're all current in terms of what we need.
Well, we should get up and visit Continental, Litchfield Sand and Gravel, and the one across from Mel's, I looked at it the other day, and we have the $5,000 bond, so, you know, they didn't do anything with it. We would just seed it. Right now, it's sand on the bottom, and the slopes are trees.
Now, who, that's what they do parking for, the overflow parking, right?
Right.
Okay. So that in back of it is an excavation site?
It was an old excavation
It
site.
was? And the current owner on the record is Mel's, whoever owns
No,
Mel's?
no, it was Mr. Charbonneau, the father, and now it's CarCon or something to that effect. Continental Hair Design, I think, owns it.
And is there a purpose for why it's,
Still just left.
yeah. As a town, do we address why it's still left with no current purpose to it?
No, it's just a vacant land. It's, you know, it's not, the slopes are stable, they've got trees on them, and there's one little skinny piece that doesn't have trees. And the bottom is level. I mean, you wouldn't grass that now if they're using it for parking.
Because it's not really a pit, so.
No, it's not a pit anymore, right. I don't even remember the last time that it was a pit. And those are the only two that I have. I don't know what the ones Frank was thinking of.
I don't think, there's not too much more in there anyway, is there?
In there?
Yeah.
I don't know where their property line is, how much it goes into that hill, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, the hill looked like it was petering out, the good gravel, so.
There was one across the street from Gilcrest Farms. That's had a restoration plan, and I believe we had Lou look at that a number of years ago, and it's fine. It's all grown up as well.
How about in Hillcrest near the recycle center? On the
Yeah,
right,
that's
it's kind
Da-
of materials.
Yeah,
They're
that's Dana Bushy. I don't know what he's doing in there.
But there's
Never-
no excavation, obviously, because he wouldn't be allowed to without
He'd have to come for a permit.
Okay.
It's basically just storage.
Yeah, that's what, really looks like a storage.
I know that you haven't heard from Mr. Byron in terms of any specific areas of concern with ones we should address or beyond what we have on the list. Maybe if you wouldn't mind emailing just those couple to him
Okay,
and just say, are there any that stood out in his mind that we're missing?
okay.
As a planning board, Jen, is there anything we need to do at this point with those, or just keep an eye on them since they're paid up, or?
I think, just to use it as a chance to go back to what's in the excavation regulations and just review the standard, procedures associated with them. I think it's more just an opportunity for the board to go back and take a look at that. I did go through the regulations and, boiled it down to like the Cliff Notes version, of all bullets. So some of the kind of key highlights in there is your excavation regulations. They build off of the existing state statute, RSA 155E, which addresses local excavations and their regulation. Through your regulation, the planning board is authorized to act as the regulator as is defined in statute. And that which means that all applications for excavations have to come to you, the planning board. The excavation regulations are pretty straightforward in that they go through and cover the application process, the permitting process, and then some of those conditions associated with it. So, it covers what needs to be included for information in the application. It's, particularly the site plan, so that you have complete information on what is going to happen on the site. And that's what needs to then get inspected annually. A permit is good for 1 year, after which the applicant needs to renew their excavation permit. If there are any changes, what they have to submit is the changes. If everything is continuing as in their original application, then they just refile the application form and say continuing as already permitted. They can do amendments of their application, so that if they're not, able to follow all of the conditions as they had originally been permitted, then they can apply for an amendment to that permit. Some of the basics for why you've got this and some of those requirements is just to make sure you're ensuring safety for your trucks coming in and out of the site, that you're not having any environmental damage, that's not damaging your aquifer, and then making sure that you're retaining your topsoil on site so that when the operation ceases, then there is that topsoil already available for restoration. As part of the application, they have to put together a restoration plan, which is what Joan mentioned for the others, that they do have an effect. And what it is they have, the restoration plan is due within 6 months there, and it's to be completed within one year. So if your permit expires, you're no longer operating that site, they have 1 year to complete the restoration plan. And that's what you have the bond in effect for. So whatever the restoration plan says that they'll do, you have the bond to cover those costs in the event that they don't follow through with the restoration. And the whole intent of the restoration is to get the site back to a usable condition, and so that your topography and your drainage functions properly, and that a subsequent owner or user of the site could use the site for anything as permitted under zoning. So if it's in an area zoned as residential, it needs to be in a condition so that someone could then go in and put houses in that site. So I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. There are fees associated with the permit application, and there is even a fee that the board can assess each time they go out for a site inspection, and the site inspection is for that annual inspection to make sure that that permit is being enforced. One of the quick things I noticed, though, is the excavation regulation hasn't been updated in quite some time. And, right, so the fee schedule actually has more current fees, which are significantly more than what's in the ordinance, because I think the last ordinance was updated, it was like 1984.
Yep.
So that is kind of the procedures in a nutshell.
Should we put this on the agenda for after impact fees are done as the next item to update, or
I mean,
the fees are the only
it's
thing
just
that
the
would be changed?
fees,
Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, that would be an easy change.
And everything is current in terms of, I don't mean the bonds are current, but the yearly application or is all the paperwork in line with all of them,
I
as far as we know?
don't have a yearly application, no. I'll check on that. So, there's anything here.
Are there any more questions regarding this, or on specific? Could you give an update, Jen, at some point in the future as to what the fees should be changed to, or inflation?
They're already in your fee schedule that you updated, last
Okay, so
fall.
this just isn't updated.
Yeah, this just isn't updated.
Do we have to do it officially to update it, or is it something that is just a record keeping?
I think you just defer to your official fee schedule.
Well, should we take the fees out of here?
You could take the fees out of here and simply just say that, as set in the fee schedule.
Yeah, okay.
The things that are in here, though, that aren't in the fee schedule are those enforcement item. Like in here, it's $25 for each site visit. That wouldn't cover an hour of Lou's time, let alone the cost of Lou to go to the site. But there's that $25 for each site visit. For enforcement is in the ordinance, not in the excavation regulation. I don't believe it was on the fee schedule. The fee schedule was just that fee for that initial application.
So are we better off updating the fee schedule to include other
That might
areas
be-
that are covered in this?
That might be easier. Yeah.
Okay, and remove it from this document?
Yeah.
Is that something that has to be modified and voted upon, or is that just something?
It's something that the planning board just would do. It would be a hearing and a vote.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, I might just cluster it so that if you have other.
For the next
don't
public
know.
hearing, just put it in for that one.
Yeah, I don't know that you have other land use regulation changes that you're planning on. I don't know. Do you do the fee schedule annually or just as needed?
As needed?
Yeah. So I don't know that there's anything else in the foreseeable future that would be an amendment, so you can do it whenever you need to.
Very good.
Be good one to take up this fall one.
You what?
Be good one to take up this fall when we get.
Okay. We table that for now. Next on the agenda, the impact fee reworked ordinance. So kind of the next step of that. If you want to, I know you sent out comments from multiple sources. And,
I've compiled all the comments in the revised draft.
Okay, is that the
That's
best one
on
to look
there.
at? Okay.
The clean draft might be easier to use. I did also post, just really quickly before we jump into the ordinance, I posted a link to an email from Mr. Mayberry on his progress on the methodology documents.
Okay.
And so that's there, I yellow highlighted it under the methodology section there. Essentially, he was just said that he still needed to have a conversation with Jason about the road fee and the more likely annual expenditures. And so that he had planned to follow up. This was on May 12th, so last week. So he said he would follow up last week with him. And so then his principal concern, though, thus far has been on working through the Griffin Memorial School needs first, and has been working with Brian Cochran to do so. So that's where he's been focused, and he had kind of requests for information out on that as well, so he was going to follow up and see where folks were at.
Okay. Fantastic. So we should go to the reorganized, cleaned up PDF
Yeah,
as the best one to follow.
yeah, it's probably easier.
This had all the changes and updates
Yes.
through the last meeting.
Yes. So anything that's a yellow highlight, it's any of the changes that have been made to the text based upon, the conversations at the April and the most previous, meeting. Trying to think, I mean, do you want to go through all of the yellow highlights, or do you want to focus on where I have additional feedback? Because what I did is I took all of the questions that the board had remaining in areas where the board was looking for some input on, and sent out a list of questions that went to Bruce Mayberry, Jason Hope, Kevin Lynch, and then Jason forwarded a couple of those questions over to council as well.
So all the comments in the column are new comments that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, particularly if they're there in red text. I tried to, highlight that, which was direct quotes.
I think we should address
So
those if
stand out.
those were feedback from
Okay,
Mr. Mayberry. If the board's okay with that.
okay. So the first such comment is on net floor area. So this one, honestly, it perplexes me because you're not the first community to base their impact fees on square footage. And the issue is with making sure that what's in the ordinance for the basis of calculation for the fee matches up with the basis under which the fee schedule was set. So the issue here is that to have a readily available data source to be able to do the data analysis of the cost on a per square foot basis, Mr. Mayberry uses the effective area, which is included within the assessing data. The effective area isn't necessarily defined or computed in exactly the same way that anything is defined or computed at the time of application. So, when the impact fee has to be paid and they actually go through and do the math and say, okay, this is the rate that was locked in at the time that your application was approved. This is what you actually built. You multiply it times your square feet, then that's what your fee is due. So we've been trying to go back and forth and say, okay, the assessment isn't conducted yet at the time when the impact fee is due. So you don't have the effective area computed from the assessor to make sure that comparison is perfect. So my guess is everyone else is just going with an imperfect model and saying it's close enough. So Mr. Mayber's like, well, I can come up with a adjustment factor to convert from effective area to net area. No, let's just get the net living area or floor area to be as close as we possibly can. So I don't really have, so all I have from an answer from Mr. Mayberry is that they're not a perfect match. So I think what I need to essentially do is just find out how exactly effective area is defined and computed, and just try and make the definition match that as close as possible here. The trick is what Kevin is seeing at the time that something comes in for its certificate of occupancy, and try not to come up with yet another set of computations that an applicant has to prepare. And so let's just find whatever is out there existing that's closest
So does
match.
Mr. Lynch do effective, net, or uses the heated area, so that would be?
Heated.
That's the third way then.
The heat, yeah. So I think everyone kind of went back and said the net floor area is pretty darn close. I think what the big difference is so we said the total of all floor areas of a building, excluding stairwells and elevator shafts and equipment rooms. I think we would scratch that stairwells, elevator shaft, and equipment rooms because most often they can be included within that heated area. The important part to exclude is your parking, your garage, or your unfinished basement. So, and here it says excluded are all floors below the first or ground floor. So I think to better match what Kevin has, I think if we just simply scratched out stairwells and elevator shafts, equipment rooms, I think we'd be pretty darn close. And the definition would,
So Kevin's saying if it's a finished basement, then it's a habitable area because it's a heated area.
right,
So, but Mr. Maryberry, that would not be included because it's not part of the effective area?
right.
Okay. To me, I would think an impact fee should be based on, can you live in it? Is it,
I don't know how the assessors define effective area, and I deal with this a lot. And every town has different definitions for effective area, gross area, net area, living area. Every single one is different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, how do we define them currently? In the sense of they're defined somewhere,
We call it gross living area,
okay.
which, or,
gross living area.
no, or, I know. Is that what it is? Hold on. It's either that or, yes, gross living area.
You can call it a name, but how do you define what's inside the name? Because you can call it whatever you want, but
Right, it's the definition.
numbers- yeah.
That's
what
the,
numbers come up with that?
right. So what Mr. Mayberry is saying is that the effective area is generally gonna be larger than the net floor area, at least as we have net floor area here defined.
The
So-
effective area would include the basement? 'Cause that's if.
I don't know if it's
effective,
the basement or it's the fact that it's got like your stairwells and your closets and all of that factored into your effective area. The effective area is like your heated, essentially your heated area that Kevin's looking at, so.
But then, why would the net be smaller than if the effective area is the heated area?
Because the net excludes like your spaces that you're not actually gonna live in, like you're not gonna sit down and take a nap on your staircase. Those kinda, there'll be, your equipment room, or like your laundry room, if that was in a heated, like if you have a room that's got your hot water heater in it, or just a closet that your hot water heater's in it, then that would get excluded from that net
But
area.
currently, impact fees are calculated based off of, if Kevin does it by
Essentially a
area.
heated area,
that means if your utility room is on the first floor is heated, your utility room is part of the,
correct. What do you think?
I just have a hot button, and you could ask whoever does the assessments for our town.
Yeah.
You see these kind of ceilings, cathedral-type ceilings? Okay, that's included as part of the effective area, but it's done on a adjusted factor. In other words, that area up there, okay, is part of the effective area of this area down here, but this area is square foot to some ceiling height, and then that area up there is something less for effective area because it's slanted and whatever.
So it's counted essentially as a second floor, even though it doesn't have the
Of
floor.
course, in the assessment, they count these kinds of ceilings. It drives me nuts when I look at my property assessment
Because you could
card,
put
but
a
they do.
loft in it if you, at some point. That's what they're looking at.
So no matter what, when you compute your floor area, it's not gonna
should be where there's a floor.
be a perfect match to your effective area. And the fact of the matter is you're not the first community to deal with this, because the only source of data that there is to come up with a per square foot cost of new development is to use the assessing data.
But here again, you just said it, the square foot. The effective area is not the square foot.
Right. Of exact floor area,
Yeah.
right. So,
I mean, that floor area covers what is there.
right,
And like Kevin says, anything that's four-season
right,
are heatable.
right.
So I mean, just because his methodology is based on effective, get this right, what is it called, what did it say, effective area,
Yeah,
okay? He's gonna come up with a per square foot price,
right,
okay? And that's fine, and if we wanna apply that same per square foot price to whatever area we define that floor area, whatever to be, I mean, I don't understand what the problem is.
all right. And I think he's just saying that you'll end up with a conservative amount that's assessed per square foot. So it may not quite hit the amount of the true cost.
Yeah, but we'll see what he's looking at. I could have a finished basement
Right,
that's unheated.
right,
Is it living area?
no,
It's finished.
right.
The assessor's gonna say that's living area, even though it's not heated.
So how do you want me to tackle this?
I think, I think go the assessor and Kevin.
Okay, so take out stairwells, elevator shaft, equipment
Yeah.
rooms, and just keep it to, it's everything first floor and up that is, used for human habitation.
Yeah.
So, okay,
If it has a heated basement, that would be considered living area.
it is the broken pen.
He's trying to make it too complicated.
Absolutely.
All right,
I don't care about that
Do you
area.
live up there? I don't
No.
know if I pay taxes to that.
Well, I may have a trapeze up there,
But Kevin said the basement is not used as the area calculation. He says here the basement in most cases is used as living area,
but is
but
not
is not
counted.
used in area calculation.
Right. Here, this definition though says that, all floors below the first or ground floor are excluded except when used or intended to be used for human habitation or service to the public. So if you finish it and you heat it and you
Yeah.
plan to use it,
And
Then it's-
then it
Included.
counts.
Yep.
So,
Nope.
all right, I think we're closer.
Yeah.
And I think it's as good as it's gonna get. All right, so that deals with all of those notes. I can drop that big, long text box. Okay,
Public capital facilities.
yes. Okay, so you had the question about the outfitting of new space.
Yep.
And so Mr. Mayberry's response is essentially yes, you can outfit your space, but it's got to be reasonable. Is there a definition of what's reasonable? No. And that's kind of something that comes up with everything that you do. So part of his justification on why you can do the outfitting is because if you were to go and use the school building aid, that would include the basic costs of outfitting that space. So that answered that question. The next piece that he said, since you're putting forth a definition of capital facilities as to useful life, however, the useful life I do not believe is new. Let me look at my markups. Maybe. No, you've always had the useful life piece in there. It's the value that's new. So part of what he's concerned about is just making sure that what he includes in the methodologies as what the needs are or potential needs may be for capital facilities due to new growth, is he'll need to make sure that those fit within this definition, was part of his concern. What else did we have here?
And the capital facilities definition is not something that, when it says you are putting forth, that's meaning the separate committee, correct? The CIP committee? Or are we defining ourselves
No, I think he's looking at this here and thinking that
separate from it?
yeah, that the amendments that are proposed include that, useful life. The thing that is new is the value.
Okay.
So I think the majority of the comments really here just relate to, what he needs to do from the end of the methodologies to keep everything consistent, except for his last paragraph where he's proposed a few edits. He suggested not to exclude facility replacements. His concern was that that could limit your recoupment of capital costs of existing facilities placed in service in the past, which were intended to meet the needs for future growth. So, for example, it could potentially impact the school and road fee systems as they presently exist. So for that little bit, I just deleted the facility replacements.
Any other concerns with the 130106? Okay. So next we jump to computation of impact fee. Infamous dates.
Okay, so yeah, this here was simply, we were looking for additional feedback from Jason on whether we needed to keep the dates. He said no.
He had looked at the reason he said the other before, he was thinking of something else.
Okay,
So I saw him the other day, I was talking to him.
okay.
Send me that one. He looks at it, yeah, he says, that don't make any sense to have that in there.
Yeah, no, so he said, go ahead. The other piece, that I didn't paste the comments in here because they just would not fit, was everyone kind of jumped on the vesting thing. And this relates to another, getting at the when you pay portion of things. And when, section, I think it's 130203. It's the next section, the payment of fees. So the way it's set is that your impact fee rate is assessed at time of plan approval. So when an applicant comes in and they present whatever the fee that's in effect, that's the fee they're subject to. And then they don't have to pay until they actually complete the construction and place that new residential unit or new commercial unit into use. And so then they pay when the certificate of occupancy is issued. There's that question though about, well, what happens if it's 10 years later? That rate that was in effect 10 years ago isn't really the true cost. And so where does vesting come into play, and how and where is an applicant protected under the current statutes with vesting? And so initially, the statement up here, in 1302.02, A and B, there was a note about vesting, that Bruce Mayberry had said, no, that vesting pieces accept, impact fees. You get the 4 years, except if it's impact fees. Well, we went and I know it's a little bit of weird how the statute is phrased, so did a little bit more research, read some really dry articles. I'm sorry, Mike, they were written, in such legalese that you had to read it a couple times and a couple times again. And so I gave you guys all those 3 paragraphs so you could have the delight of reading them as well. So if you go to the end of the document, I just pasted in all of the conversation about the vesting, that was the issues that everyone kept bouncing around. And so what it comes down to, there was a court case here in the town of Litchfield, that had to do with vesting, and impact fees. So essentially it said, look, whatever was in effect at the time that the application came in, that's what the impact fees were. That's where the process of locking in the rate at the time of application came into practice. Now, the way the statute is written, though, you look at it and you go, I don't really understand, but it says accept impact fees, so you're not protected from statutory changes. You are. So there's this whole doctrine of vested rights, which is a little summary, and there's a few paragraphs that specifically talk about impact fees. And what it boils down to is they are protected for the 4 years or 5 years, depending on when the application came in. And after that point in time, if the fee changes, the fee changes, and they're no longer vested. So it makes things even more exciting. From an administrative standpoint. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Really exciting stuff. So what it comes down to is we need to look at how we should properly mention vesting, especially now since we don't need to include the dates. So what I imagine is that A and B will be merged in section 1302.02. A and B will get merged and significantly reduced. And so I don't know if we even need to mention vesting because it's a statutory right.
And how long's it been at statutory right, though?
So the
It's been challenged
statute
enough.
No, the statute was revised after the Morrow case.
Which was what date then?
This case was in 2000.
All right. So it's withstand 14 years. Withstood 14 years.
Yeah, so, right, so the statute was revised subsequent to that.
Is there any danger in the statute can change? Correct? I mean,
Right.
The State House can
Well, the legislature can come in and
adjust it how they
Yeah,
see fit. So
that's how
is it
it's-
dangerous to not put something specific when but I guess the law's a law, so you have to follow it anyway.
Right.
Do you see any issue just what you say, referring out to the statute? So you don't even have to have the vesting schedule in here?
Yeah, I don't even know if you need to.
Because if it's not in there,
Specific to being vesting.
substantial completion of improvements. I guess you have to meet that in order
Right.
for the project subject to change of impact fee ordinances. But what constitutes substantial completion? I guess if you're pretty much,
I'm hoping your zoning ordinance has a definition in it. It's up to municipalities to define substantial completion.
You can have a case that after 5 years, the builder decides to change the style of the house.
Right,
That changes your square footage.
right.
So that would be a major change.
it would have to be something major to be substantial, so I would think.
But generally, substantial completion is they have to have come in, have the road in place, Foundation, if it's a single structure, roads in place, foundations in place, and some progress has occurred. To show that you've made that substantial investment, you're not gonna abandon your work.
Kinda like when we did with the acceptance of roads, if it's 80% or whatever.
Right.
We discussed substantial completion of a project not too long ago. I just can't recollect what it was around.
Those on the roads.
The acceptance of roads?
Yeah.
Was it the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, make it 80%.
We used to use a third on developments if they get the infrastructure in and they're a third of the way along.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So by wiping these two out and merging them, shrinking them down, eliminating the dates, do you
Yeah.
put a little clause saying refer to statute, or you just assume they would because the statute overrides this anyway?
Well, the statute prevails
Yeah.
regardless.
If you had to put a pointer to it in here,
We can put a pointer to the statute here, yeah.
maybe just say per whatever the
Yep.
statute is. And that way, as it adjusts, we don't have to change this, because if it's referring to the statute, with the statute, the content can change to the statute with the pointer change. Like,
Yep.
it would become a new number or
Right.
whatever, so.
Which in the last, 5 years or so, the number of years has changed many times. It went from 4 to 6 to 4 to 5.
So maybe we shouldn't refer a specific statute number if that changes, if they adopt, or is that number
Oh, the number of
static?
years. The number of years
I'm talking about
that you
the
have.
statute name. where
Right,
you're-
the statute, the number
That would
won't
always stay the
change.
same, okay.
Yeah, that'll-
So you could refer that as it adjusts, and
Yeah.
automatically this will follow it,
Right.
okay. I think that's the easiest way to do it, so.
Okay. All right. So that can disappear. My goal is to get rid of all of the bubbles in the margins.
Good goal.
Oh,
So now are we on JC 5?
yeah.
Correct, I think.
Okay, so, this is a comment on something that's not proposed to be changed. This is existing language. So this was more just in the course of reading through. Jason went, wait a minute, the planning board's not in the habit of hearing appeals. The zoning board normally hears appeals. So he just kind of threw it out there and said, well, shouldn't it be the zoning board? And he asked council, and council's reply was, whoever you appoint to hear appeals under this can hear the appeals under this. So you can leave it as is. You can change it. This is the same comment as the next one as well. So which is it right below it? I'm working off, yeah, it's right below it. And you'll see the portion in red text is the reply from council.
I guess the way I look at it, is there anything else, for any other reason they would go back, it would be to the ZBA, so as avoiding two different groups and two different meetings to get something done.
Yeah,
I mean,
it makes sense for the appeal to come back to the planning board in that, the planning board is familiar with the impact fee, ordinance. That said, you don't normally hear appeals.
is there any other type of appeal that would come before this board versus the ZBA?
Well, the excavation,
That's true.
you can appeal,
Yep.
it's in the statute. This says Board of Selectmen.
Determinations made by the Board of Selectmen may be appealed to the planning board.
I think that goes to Part D of 130203. The planning board and the assessed property may be established an alternate, mutually acceptable schedule of payment.
Yeah,
Is that the line it's referring to?
there's a couple different bits.
But it has to do with the,
Fix the numbers.
payment.
Right.
That wouldn't be the zoning board.
No,
'cause
that's
it's
why
not a
it
zone-
makes
it's
sense.
Nothing to do with zoning.
Although this is in the zoning ordinance. Although this is in the zoning ordinance.
In the wood, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a zoning issue
Right. No, you're
per
right.
se,
No. It's a planning issue.
yeah.
Because what council's saying is if you don't have anything in place, then it automatically defaults
Right.
to ZBA.
Right.
If you want something in place, then you can have an ordinance.
Right.
So you're saying the planning board should see it?
I would say we should stay with
Keep
the
it.
planning
We
board,
should keep it.
yeah. There's a zoning board with no background on it, and would not have been involved in it. Not trying to take away from them, but,
Well, you're just not given something.
right.
They don't do it already.
Right.
Maybe if there's, Jason's only comment is just, what do we have more some? Maybe, I would say leave it as is, but maybe just ask Jason one return email back or comment back, is there any substantive reason besides what he said there?
Okay.
I mean, at least had time to think about it. So we both agree that would be both for the appeals too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The council says there it makes more sense to go to the Board of Selectmen rather than the ZBA. So does council even think it should go to the planning board for the appeal one? JC six comment?
Was that a typo?
No, because the way I think the question was originally posed to council was that whether appeals should instead be going to the ZBA or the BOS.
Oh, so the planning board wasn't in the question?
Not really.
Okay.
Although
Would the
although
plan-
council, I believe, got the draft as well, so they could see specific.
Could the planning board make a recommendation that would go
To the Board of
to the
Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen would be the final?
Well, they would have to go that way anyway.
So like a two-step appeal process?
We make the recommendation because we're the planning board.
Right.
They
Enacted,
either
yeah.
act on it or
Just like we do in other matters.
just a suggestion. I don't, do it that
Would you want to do that with both things?
Yeah.
So in both cases, it's being a recommendation sent to the Board of Selectmen, bypassing the ZBA, and then the Board of Selectmen decides what direction to take, based on the recommendation that we provide.
Yeah.
So we're not deciding the appeal, but we're giving the information towards the appeal to the town.
Right.
Okay.
So we're not taking away from their authority. We're basically.
Saving them a little legwork.
I assume anyway, if they went directly to the Board of
first, they'd have to
Selectmen,
come to us
yeah, they would
to
come for
find out what we
questions.
did anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe run that by Jason too.
Mm-hmm.
And see what he thinks before that's cemented in stone.
You also wanna run it past your selectmen's ex officio member to see if the selectmen
Want it?
want it.
When you email that to Jason, can you ask, he goes to the selectmen meetings, correct? He's at,
Yeah, Jason's.
I'm assuming he does, can you have him maybe bring it up in
Okay.
or maybe a quick agenda item with them? Just what their preference would be?
Sure, I'll
'Cause you're right.
copy Kevin on that email.
No,
Um,
politeness we should ask
yeah.
before we do.
Right,
And may make reference to what town council was trying to
Yep.
saying that, so that they understand that.
The reasoning.
Right, it was Jason who went to council on the couple remaining questions, because there were a couple things that he and I spoke about together on the phone and went, he said, you know what, why don't I just ask council now, so we get that good input while we're grappling with it and save everyone some time.
Okay.
So,
Because the question, I mean, he's asking whether we have the statutory authority to hear appeals.
right,
The answer that's given doesn't really,
doesn't answer that
doesn't
question.
answer the question.
It was answered by a lawyer, right? Is that why?
Probably.
That is true, though.
I mean, I understand the default rule, but it doesn't really answer whether we have authority.
Okay.
All right. Next red box is 130401, methodology.
So, in the two subparagraphs, 1 and 2, Mr. Mayberry had made the suggestion of deleting the words additional and land in both of those subparagraphs so that it read simply as new development. So it would simply be providing public capital facilities necessitated by new developments for which the fees are levied.
I think it's cleaner, less ambiguous.
I agree.
And through this whole thing, we want to be consistent in terms of how we're labeling and telling things.
Right.
So, I don't know, is there any other areas where it's referenced that way, that we want to make it new development? Because his comment is to always refer to it as new development.
Yeah. I think it's all set. I can do a word search.
Okay.
I guess you can reference back, is the definition of new development in the ordinance.
There is a definition of new development.
Okay, so.
Yeah. And it's new development, not new land development.
As he's saying in subparagraph 2 to say constructed in anticipation of new development. Taking out growth there. Because his point of household size does not necessarily grow with unit growth.
Right.
Because growth is not defined. I mean, growth could just be unit growth. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's growth in headcount.
Right, and so what he's saying is your actual unit in which you're measuring growth impacts is the number of houses,
Yep.
not the number of people.
Yep.
And current demographic trends have declining household sizes, which means fewer people living in a house, which means you may have, you used to have 6 people in 2 houses, now you've got 6 people in 3 houses. You can kind of think of it that way. So you may not be increasing in people,
Yep.
but you are increasing in houses.
So do we have to, is he suggesting then the word growth be removed or defined as? I mean, 'cause to me, when I read it first, the new growth and development, I just automatically assumed a unit growth.
Right, right. So I think he, essentially, it's just looking to make sure that we consistently use the defined term new development,
Yep.
not new land development or new growth and development. Just say new development because we have a concrete definition
Okay.
of what new development is.
So we'll just finish the sentence as anticipation of new development.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. Any concerns from anyone or? No?
The next word bubble, this is an edit I made after a meeting. This was my edits, not your edits. So I wanted to flag it in particular, to get your approval for my edits. Cause I try and stick to editing as you request.
Is that just the second half of C or is that?
Yes,
also.
it's just the sentence fragment at the end.
Okay.
So, and why I made this edit was because in the process of shifting and merging sections so that you had kind of things administratively grouped together and so that you had that flow, I noticed a couple, in this case, a discrepancy. So paragraph C here, as it stands, was at the very front of your existing ordinance. And it says that you, the planning board, have the authority to adopt methodologies and do your schedules. But then later in your ordinance, you have this piece that says that the planning board has to do an annual review and make a recommendation to the selectmen who adopt the fee schedules. So you had essentially a conflict. It was set up so that the board could come up with the whole methodology and the schedule, and then
You're giving it.
they couldn't. The authority to adopt the updates is the selectmen's.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, should it all be consistent? And so I put this that just fragment and approved by the Board of Selectmen as required in the section below, just to make it consistent. The other part of it was where the way the update is going here, you've got essentially what's been your cost escalator that'll be built into your methodology document. And so what Mr. Mayberry is going to do is he's just going to simply flag what the inputs are and how to just plug in those inputs and rerun the methodology to do an update in that manner so that it's more accurate reflection of the true costs of development. And so you've got all of that going into that methodology document, which meant if you kind of stuck with the way this is structured, it would never go to the selectmen because you would just be readopting the methodology document. And that didn't seem appropriate. It seemed like short-circuiting the process that's currently in effect.
Oh, that's fine.
So.
Good catch. So he's saying we should keep D and E, but not necessarily have it in that spot, and we could define it somewhere else. Is that what Mr. Mayberry's, the gist of his comment?
Yeah, he's saying essentially this should be
Somewhere.
captured by the new development. definition.
definition, which is not in this spot, that's somewhere else.
It's in your definitions. So you do have
So
in
it's
your
redundant. Or,
right. So in your new development, you do have the conversion of a legally existing use or additions thereto, which would result in a net increase in the number of dwelling units. You have the conversion of an existing use to another non-residential use if such change of use creates a demand for capital facilities. You might want to add just another bullet to that definition that, see, that's conversion, they're both conversions, so I don't know. I might just want to double check and make sure that these instances would be captured.
in what we
I
have
think,
already.
yeah, I think they are though. I think they are, and essentially the piece that is the how it would be applied, I think that's what goes into that methodology that he's working on.
Yeah, I would say if D and E are both reflected completely in the definition of new development, then strike it here because it's just redundant. You in agreement on that?
Yep.
Okay. It sounded like they all were, but just to be safe,
Yeah.
just to double check. Right, so the B of 130402 need to include methodology in the impact fee schedule methodology document, which, is it there currently?
No,
Is
but
that
the
rough?
reply from Mr. Mayberry was that yes, and that could be done, and he would just include a section to recap the variables. Those are what I just mentioned about the inputs that he would make sure are documented.
So that's currently not in there.
Nope.
Okay.
Or he does a excellent job of documenting the data he uses and the
Yep.
methodology he uses. He'll just make sure it's very clear so that you can come in each year and plunk in the numbers and
Update it
and
yearly.
do the update.
Okay. Sounds good. Oh, this whole thing again. Owner of the property versus the refunds. So currently, as is now, they're refunded to the owner, current property owner. Or is
So,
it own,
this has gone around in a few circles.
I know, that's why I'm forgetting which direction
Yeah.
it's there now.
All right. So, did you get comment 11?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's skip comment 11 temporarily and go to 13.
Okay.
So the big comment is here is that the town has an obligation to make that refund. Said, I'm not sure that you can mandate that the owner apply for it in order to receive it, since you're obligated to refund it anyways.
But somewhere else we refer, unless it was here, to a time frame.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they get notified and then they have to say, yes, I want my money back.
But if they never respond, then there's this thing, we still have to refund the money because it's not ours to begin with, to spend.
Essentially. Yes.
So why even
That's
notify and wait?
Just send it. I think because you want to make sure that it actually goes to the right person. and that's why the notify and get a response back, then pay. Is part of it. So, you know, it's the town's way of confirming that it's going to the right person. Regardless, Mr. Mayberry suggested kind of reordering some of those sections. But that even is completely beside the point, because I was chatting with Jason and we had a little confusion going on, and we said, wait. Let's take a second and step back. So we went back to a letter that the town had received from council a few years back, which said that refunds should not be going to the current owner. Refunds should only go to the person who paid the fee in the first place.
If you pay the fee, then you pass the fee, though.
Exactly. So,
And then double dipping, because you get refunded, yeah.
yes,
That's-
that was a concern.
Yep.
However, so this is one of the things that Jason said, well, all right, that advice was from former council. Let's make sure current council agrees.
Yep.
Current council said, I agree. That refunds should go back to the person who paid it.
Well, technically speaking, it's drawing straws, but if you pass it on to the owner of the house, technically they paid it by being passed to them.
Right.
So depending how much you want to par this down, technically they paid it. I mean, I don't know if a builder has a line item as an impact fee on the closing, or if it's just they put it in the price,
Right.
the cost of it.
It's hidden in the price.
Right.
So,
And I think council fully understood that. But what council was going based on is interpretation of statute, and they pulled out a few different clauses in statute that said, this is why I believe this is the directive.
because you can't prove that the builder actually did pass the fee to the owner of the house, because if it's not explicitly mentioned as an impact fee, it's just in the price. I kind of understand that side too. I mean, you don't know for sure that, of course they did, or they probably did, but.
Right. So they did offer a way around it. In that you can have the fee payer, at the time they pay their fee, sign a waiver that authorizes the town to refund the impact fee to whoever is the owner of the property at the time the refund becomes due. Which is administratively the easier way to do it, because you just simply go, who owns this piece of property? You look it up in the assessing, and you got it. And that is why I wanted to skip 11 and go back to 11, because Mr. Mayberry is saying, well, shouldn't you already have it in your tax assessments? Why is this a big deal? Because there is the whole thing about keeping up to date of who the record, and who's got to keep the record of who the current owner is. Well, your assessor already has it. So it was kind of moot to talk about comment 11.
Yep, without 13.
Yeah, without looking at 13 and 14.
So does the attorney have any suggested language that might be appropriate to?
Change fee payer to owner. No, change owner to fee payer, sorry.
I meant about having a developer sign a waiver.
No, they didn't at the but I'm sure we could follow up and ask about that, if that was the route that the town wished to go. I think you would need to have something here, though, that it would say the fee payer receives a refund unless the fee payer has authorized the town to issue that refund to the current owner.
How have we done it in the past?
It's been going to the fee payer,
Which means the builder.
which is contrary to the current ordinance, but it was being done contrary to the current ordinance because it was the understanding that the language in the current ordinance was not valid.
And for how many years that was done like that? The ordinance wasn't valid. Why wasn't it addressed?
So again, this is kind of like the, if we go back to all the multiple iterations of revising this,
Yeah.
Steve Wagner had done Steve is my predecessor. He had done the initial round of edits, and he had changed everything to fee payer in the draft. And we kind of like, oh, why would we do that? The fee gets passed on to the owner, and so we changed it back to owner. And I thought I was making a change and I was actually changing it back to the existing language. So then we rejected all the changes, and we lost all the changes, and so we should have just listened to Steve in the first place. He knew what he was talking about. So it was a casualty of too many fingers and over too long of a period of time.
Do you know any other towns has anyone else done it this way in terms of the waiver signed, and is this a new?
I don't know.
I was curious, what do other towns do about refunds? Do they refund to the?
Well, I think
The owner?
clearly you have the legal counsel telling us that it should be the fee payer, and so I don't think we should defer to what other towns do. It's what we pay our attorney for.
And now you have two attorneys' opinions that say
Right.
fee payer.
You know, you can carry it forward. The builder pays the fee, passes it on to the owner. Now, the owner sells the house again before the 6 years is up. So this third party gets the money back.
Yep.
He didn't pay it. The first owner did, not the second owner.
Oh,
Because the first owner's not gonna think of passing on impact fees.
that's true. That's not gonna be inherent in the property's value.
No.
But you never know for certain if the developer ever, I mean, we know.
We know they do, but it's not in black and white.
There's no way.
Why is
to
the
state
developer
for
gonna sign
a
this,
fact
saying that
that it's done.
they're gonna allow the refund to go to the owner of the house? I mean, I don't know how many developers would actually sign this, but I guess you present it as an option, but.
So Lebanon says a refund shall be made to the owner of record.
Which means the current owner of the house, according to the tax assessment.
I don't even think this is really something that should warrant further discussion with, you know, what our legal counsel is telling us.
All right, so it goes to the fee payer. Owner to fee payer. Jason would appreciate if we, deleted the statement of exactly how, it's to be mailed. He says people certainly don't ignore something that came via first class that says we owe you money. That it didn't need to be sent via certified mail for someone to take notice.
And certified mail costs money.
And certified mail costs more money.
No, that's fine.
I gotta ask the question, if it's now the fee payer, which we agree,
Yeah.
and somebody comes in here and pays a lot of fees and picks up and goes to Timbuktu, and we don't know where they are anymore, what happens to those impact fees that have to be refunded if we cannot identify the fee payer?
Right.
Well, the fee payer's business is defunct.
Right, and so that's where that piece that was flagged in comment 11 becomes important, because now that changes from current owner of property to the fee payer. And so they need to, that fee payer needs to keep their address current and up to date here in the town.
Yeah,
And
but
that's their obligation.
But if they don't do it, then where does the money go?
what becomes the money?
That's a good question.
Does the town rely on the assessor's information, or does the town have its own records keeping?
For current owner,
Yeah.
the assessing.
So they go to the assessing information, they don't really keep their own
No, there's
documents?
not a separate file. Then are you still gonna do the waiver? Where the builder can waive it?
No. I think we revised that, well, if the builder signs off on it, they agree to it, but
No, I mean if he signs off to give it to the current owner.
Unless you put money in.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
you what?
That's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's just another paperwork.
It just adds an administrative burden on the town, and you know, it's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Change your mind.
But we still leave it, it's still left in limbo, is if you can't repay these fees, what happens to it?
Does the state statute mention anything like that? In terms of money you can't refund for some reason? When it becomes town revenue or
Does it default somewhere?
after a certain number of years?
I think it's gonna be highly unlikely. They'll go unclaimed, but I can look into it and find out.
Because
Maybe.
if people do go out of business, they do move to other states.
Right.
Flee the country.
I've got some of
And like we
that.
say, they've more than likely passed these on to the owner,
Yeah.
so they're not gonna be looking for this money back, they've already got it.
I don't think council would actually recommend putting in there something as blatant as saying if within X period of time the payer cannot be located, it goes to owner, like some verbiage like that on,
Like you've got, they've got a year,
Yeah, I just saw that.
and that's existing. It's just relocated, I do believe.
but that's a year from being notified that they're getting the refund.
Yeah.
Receiving a notice.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what would happen to the money in that case.
Yeah. That's the end of the comments. Save the best for last.
How about 12 though?
Oh,
Capital
Sorry.
improvement program?
skipped right over that. Well, that one's been floating in there. We haven't dealt with it. Okay, so this is saying, you did address the last meeting. It used to say shall, and now we changed it to should, so that it was rephrased as a listen CIP committee. We highly recommend that you do this, but there's
But
no.
is his comment when it was shall or is his comment from when it was should?
His comment was from when it was shall.
Shall, okay. So does that alleviate his concern?
I would assume.
Has the
It's more of a word issue than anything else, what he was saying.
Has the CIP committee already met? Just curious.
I haven't heard.
No, there isn't one yet.
There isn't one yet.
All right, is there anything else to go over with impact fees right now? Or are we're waiting for the school, we're waiting for Mr. Mayberry to come back with the school and the roads, right? Those
Yeah.
lingering questions?
Yeah, we need the revised school and roads, and then we need, to get the remainder started as well. And that's part of that time schedule issue. I mean, clock's ticking. I think the expectation is that this gets wrapped up in this year,
Yep.
so.
So besides those two items, what was the third item? You said the school and roads we're waiting for.
And then he's got, in phase two, he's got public facilities and what were the other ones? Not public facilities, town facilities, so like town offices, library. What was in the other?
Is he waiting on us for anything, or are we waiting on receiving the
Do
information?
we need to send him a purchase order to start phase two? Do you know?
And it's phase two in this year's budget?
Well, didn't we hold money for
Yeah.
phase two?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we probably have to
Yeah, the
send
money
them
is
something.
there, just, I don't know if we paid it yet or not.
Maybe just ask him, your next email to him, is he waiting to start that until PO number is generated?
Okay.
Because we don't want to be delayed if that's the only reason why he's waiting.
Yep. My guess is he doesn't wanna start phase two until phase
Phase
one is
one's
done.
Yep. Which are the last two things of phase one, or the last two inputs he's waiting for.
Right, and you know, frankly, I mean, if that's where he's at with those, he may be able to start the
Start
others
two.
in the interim if we can
Mhm.
do whatever needs to happen.
Is there anything else in impact fees that you would like us to discuss this evening, or are we caught up? You good? Okay. Next on the agenda, the May 6th meeting, minutes. Any comments or corrections for May 6th? Take a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of May 6, 2014, the planning board public meeting of the town of Litchfield.
Second?
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passes 4-0-0. Any other business for this evening?
Just that we did send a letter to the folks that own Moose Hollow last week and haven't heard anything yet.
I saw the email from Mr. Lynch in the comment of get this road started and completed before the bond is up, which the bond will run out the end of construction season.
It's till September 26th. And they said they would do it before September 26th. So we wrote the letter saying we need a more definitive timeline.
Because then the maintenance bond will go after that, correct?
What?
The maintenance bond will be after that for a year?
After that, yeah.
So the performance bond ends the 26th, so what do we do if he doesn't have this done by that point? Is it automatically extended, or?
No, we need to, if nothing's moving by August 1st, we need to do something.
Okay.
I have a note on the calendar, August 15th, I think, but if we don't hear from him by August 1st. And I put in there that I showed you the letter, that he should meet with all the consulting engineer, road agent, and Kevin 4 weeks before the project.
So what if the bond does expire?
Well,
Is-
we don't want that to
No, I'm
happen.
saying if it does get to that point, it's not an automatic renewal because it's still, the road's not complete, correct?
Well, I don't
What's the
thi-
process?
some of them are automatic renewal, I don't think that one is.
I would say if you haven't heard back from him within 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks to pay me, I don't wanna wait till August 1st if this ends the end of September.
Yeah, because then we'd have to get the lawyer involved, and, that takes time too, so if we haven't heard in 3 weeks,
Yeah, I would say by the, middle of July, of June, I'm sorry, middle of June.
do what?
Um,
We'll schedule a meeting or something?
I mean, invite him to a meeting, I don't know, who would reach out to him? Would it be Mr. Lynch? Would it be the,
Call his attorney and say, preparing to pull the bond. That might
Yeah.
get his attention.
Yeah, 'cause we won't have another meeting after that until the end of July.
oh, yeah. Yeah, well, because the June 17th and July 1st meetings are canceled, so
So if we don't hear by June 3rd,
if we give an update by the next meeting, maybe? Or.
Oh, I think
next-
Kevin-
we'll make
Kevin
the
will
step.
call him.
We'll decide the step at next meeting if you haven't heard anything back from him.
but do you want Kevin to give him a call before the June 3rd
Yes,
meeting?
please. Anything else? Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 400. Our next meeting will be on June 3rd at 7 PM. Have a good night.
Did anybody second
I
it?
think,